It's a bit of an overcast day, but I've got my tea, so all is right in the world. This is a book haul. I got a new job recently, and to celebrate, I bought a few books. By a few, I mean half a dozen or more. A couple of them were actually audiobooks, which is something new I'm trying. I had done a couple of nonfiction in the past couple months on audiobook. And I did a couple of fiction this month because the books I wanted to read were insanely expensive because they were older. Lesbian pulp romances from the 1950s. One of them was going to be close to $100 Canadian, which was ridiculous, and I wasn't going to pay that much just for the sake of reading this particular book. But then I found the audiobook for about $13, which was just fine with me. But in terms of books, I did go a little overboard. I picked up How to Read a Book, the classic guide to intelligent reading by Mortimer J. Alder and Charles Van Doren. Kind of on a whim. It showed up in my suggestions on Amazon for some reason. And it seemed fascinating. It seemed like something instructive, and I thought I would check it out. I've read a little bit of it, just a couple of chapters. And I was actually reading it at the Montanas near their bar, of all places. I stopped off there after work about a week ago, and the author suggests that there are different stages, different levels of reading which build off of each other, and he suggests that by reading this, a person can become a better reader over time. Increase reading speed, know when to read slow, know when to read fast, absorb facts better. And I may or may not do a review of it when I finish. How to Read a Book, the classic guide to intelligent reading. Then I had picked up a Simone de Beauvoir for my existentialist book club this month. And I managed to not, well, technically it was last month, for last month, and I managed not to read any of it at all, which kind of sucks. I'll get to it at some point and perhaps join in the old discussion at that point. But I picked up The Ethics of Ambiguity. And I really should have read this because it's such a short one, but somehow I didn't get to it last month. I picked up some Lady Grey tea, which I'm quite enjoying. It's been a long time since I had Lady Grey. Then, on a whim, if you've been watching my channel for at least a year, you might know that I have a bit of an obsession with the Everyman's Library hardback editions. Because when you take off their dust jackets, you get this beautiful kind of maroon hardback with gold, and there's a bookmark, and they're just overall generally beautiful books to hold in your hand. This is, of course, The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. This is a book that I haven't read in years. I read it when I was 14. I think it took me about 2 days to get through it. It was at the top of my list of summer reading. I went to the library. The local public library, the last day of school at the end of my grade 9 year. Took out a stack of what I believed were classics, and it's been a long time since I read this, and my copy of it is back at my parents' place in southern Ontario, about 8 hours from here in Ottawa, and it's a cheap paperback. I paid about $3 for when I was 15 or 16, and I just couldn't resist this Everyman's Library edition. And then I picked up some political nonfiction. The first being Louis David Riel, Prophet of the New World by Thomas Flanagan. I had read a couple of these good read biographies, Canadian Lives, earlier in the year, and they're about $10 on Amazon new, and I wanted to get into some more Canadian political figures. Louis Riel is, of course, famous in Canada, infamous in fact. He is considered the founding father of Manitoba, one of the founding fathers, but he was executed by the Canadian government for treason. And then I picked up a biography of one of Canada's former Governor Generals. I know nothing about her, but I'm excited to learn a bit about her, and this one is by Shirley Woods, also a good read biographies, Canadian Lives. And finally, I got into some lesbian pulp romance, as I had said, from the 1950s, specifically the works of Anne Bannon. So I started with Odd Girl Out, which is about the relationship between two college girls, Beth and Laura. And I actually started off in a good place because I later found out that this is Anne Bannon's first book, and it is the first in her series. I was a little bit disappointed in the ending, but it was very true to life, very realistic in that sense. Because yes, indeed, I did. I did read it already. And from there, I picked up Bebo Brinker. I think the second book in the series, so I did well, coincidentally, in my selection. And then I moved on to the audiobooks that I had purchased. One of them was called Journey to a Woman, which is the one I'm working on now. It's the fourth book in the series that I believe is a romance between Beth from the first book and Bebo Brinker from the second book. The third book, the title is slipping my mind right now, which is ridiculous because I just finished it yesterday. But the third book is about the relationship between Bebo Brinker and Laura in Greenwich Village. And it was hard to get through. You have topics like lavender marriages coming up. You have a rather horrific rape in that book. You have what is essentially an abusive relationship between the two main characters. You have a gay man who is fed up and who wants to live a normal life socially. And the ending itself is pretty unsatisfactory. But like all the other books, it was very true to life. It seemed very real, even though it is a lesbian pulp romance. A pulp romance, meant to be taken seriously. Actually, in the foreword to one of these editions, the author was saying that as she was writing them as a newly married woman in the 1950s, she wasn't putting any weight on them. She was writing them as something that she believed would be read and soon forgotten. She didn't expect them to have this lasting weight. She didn't expect them to become classics, to become a signifier of gay culture in the 1950s. Reading those, one of the things that struck me most is, of course, the fact that at this time in the 1950s, it was illegal to be gay. But perhaps more heart-wrenching, in one of the novels, there is a woman who is concerned that if she comes out as lesbian, there's a chance that her child will be taken away from her. Should she get a divorce from her husband, that he would get custody because she would be considered an unfit mother because she was in a relationship with a woman. But that is my book haul. And As you can see, I've read a number of them already, and I don't actually intend to be buying any more books in the near future because I still have a huge stack of library books and I have my budget to watch out for. But yeah, have a lovely day, and I am going to finish my tea.